Hello guys, this is your friend Shinobinexus 3.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Built Harem with Tsunade, Kurenai and Yugito Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please give me hype instead of comment and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. It was like that, plain and simple. They needed his help, something that no one would have expected. Well, except for Senju Tsunade, she always knew the village would need him no matter how much they hated him. I'm sorry Tsunade-sama, but you've seen the reports. He hasn't been seen for 4 years. It like he vanished off the earth. Her apprentice and assistant Kato Shizune said with sadness clear in her voice. The pig in her arm, Tun, oinked sadly at her master's and caretaker's distress. Is it wise, Shizune? Tsunade had her head in her hands as she sighed sadly and tiredly. It is wise to keep believing he'll come back. The office was quiet as Shizune looked over at the setting sun, casting the village in a light orange glow. Of course it is Shisho. That's all we have to keep doing. Shizune said strongly, and Tsunade sighed again as she got up from her chair to gaze at the village below. They don't realize how much they needed him. How much he was the heart of Konoha. She then turned her gaze to forest and land in the distance. Where are you? Dash opening parenthesis closing parenthesis dash. Naruto. A large and extremely muscular man barged into a room being shadowed by the curtains that blocked out the sun's annoying rays. Oi, do you have to scream so loudly? A lazy voice called beneath the mass of 2 women. Well, I wouldn't have to be loud if your ass knew how to wake up on time. Now get the fuck up. The man crossed his arms as the women moaned in protest of their warm pillow, slowly getting up from their almost destroyed bed. And I swear to Kami, if you break another bed, that's coming out of your paycheck. With that said, he left, slamming the door behind him. The man, known as Naruto, rolled his eyes as he stretched his shift back. That bastard really needs to get laid. He mumbled before putting on a pair of underwear and pants. He turned back around and gave the 2 women a foxy grin. Well, sorry to cut out time short, ladies, but duty calls. He gave them a lazy salute and proceeded to walk out of the room. Naruto walked down the stairs into what is seen to be a bar full of bounty hunters, civilians and other people. And the prodigal asshole comes down from his resting place. A spiky brown-haired man said with a smirk. Naruto just scoffed and sat down at a table and kicked his feet up. You're all heart, Tushin. You might want to put all that effort you used to insult me into your fighting style. The surrounding men chuckled and oohed as Tushin growled. You wanna say that to my face, brat? Tushin quickly got up in his seat and fingered the katana on his hip. Naruto just scoffed again as a beer bottle was placed next to him thanks to a server. Please, even you know it's too early for me to kick your ass. Why, you little Tushin, a gruff voice called out. I hope you aren't planning on fighting in my bar. The muscular man from early gave a glare that gave Tushin the chills. Oh, of course not, Kira-san. Just some friendly banter is all. Seeing how Kira is literally translated to killer and a famed war veteran, Tushin knew better than to get on his bad side. Good. Kira grunted out before turning to Naruto, who was flirting with one of the servers. And how many times have I told you, brat? My servers are not for your entertainment. Naruto chuckled before leaning back in his seat and took a sip from his drink. Not enough, obviously. It still amazes most people in the village how easily Naruto could get away with the disrespect he shows to the famed Senso no Kuma. Kira just grunted and looked over at the clock on the wall. You know you're almost late, brat. Naruto glanced at the wall before lazily getting out of his seat. Well, would you look at that? I am almost late. Kira just shook his head at him while pointing to the door. Just get the fuck out of my bar. Few minutes later. Iron Maiden. Welcome one and all to the Iron Maiden. The announcer in a clean black suit called out easily over the screams of the roaring crowd thanks to a sound amplifying seal. All shall be your host for the night, Nikako Genshi. And boy do we have a show for you tonight. The crowd yelled louder in approval and Genshi smiled. Now for our first-time visitors, allow me to give you a glance at your future tonight. Tonight in this very stage, he motioned around to the caged and roped area he was in. You shall see fighter all over the elemental nations fight fist to fist, weapons to weapons in a bloody death match to advance in the tournaments. The grand prize, you asked? 1 million Ryo. The crowd got louder again and Genshi silenced them with a grin. Yes, 1 million Ryo. And our fighters are men you probably never seen before. Some are nin, hunter nin, missing nin, civilians, and all in between. Yes, we have show for you tonight. Backstage. You know, sometimes I think he takes his job a little too seriously. Naruto said with a light pant as he was doing one-finger push-ups for a warm-up. Well, at least someone does. Kira grunted out with a cigar lit fresh in his mouth. He leaned against the wall as he heard the crowd getting overly excited at the announcer. The large bear of man blew a smoke ring out as Naruto visibly grimaced. You do know that I have heightened senses, right? He said as he stood back on his feet and wiped his face with a towel. Kira just smirked and blew out another ring of smoke. Ain't it a bitch? Asshole. Naruto said and ducked under a punch from the war bear. So who's the unlucky bastard that's facing me tonight? He grinned out and Kira sighed. Cocky little shit. He cleared his throat and took a glance at the lineup before chuckling. Well, I'll be damn. It seems like you got Nakatushin for the first round. The crowd got quiet before erupting into cheers. And it seems like Jin and Kinto's battle is done. Naruto yawned lazily before sitting down in a chair. Well, wake me up when it's my turn. You lazy bastard. In the crowd, Daisuke was a normal average-looking civilian man with long jet black hair that was tied into a ponytail. Currently he was looking around with a bored expression on his face as the fights continued on and on. Where is that bastard? His eyes then landed on a particular noble who was laughing down at the fight below him. There you are. Slowly making his way over, he was blocked by the noble's samurai guard. Now is this how you treat your friend's councilman Rinshi? And here I thought the fighters down there were savages. Rinshi looked over to see his friend Daisuke before grinning and motioning away his guard. Daisuke-san. So funny seeing you here. Come sit. Rinshi shooed away one of the women he hired to enter in and motioned his friend to sit next to him. Ah, thank you, councilman, and the same could be said to you. I didn't think you would enjoy entertainment like this. Daisuke poured himself a thing of sake as Rinshi laughed. Well, it's not every day that you see savages tear each other apart for a sliver of money. Besides, it places like this that my gambling side surfaces. They then turned back to the fight to see a man break another man's arm as the crowd cheered them on. Haha, yes. It seems of win this bet, Homaru-san. Rinshi grinned to another noble who looked down at the fight in disappointment. So any good news of the capital city? Daisuke said with humor in his tone as he offered Rinshi a cup of sake, to which he chuckled. Well, if you count the Tsuchikage beginning to be more lenient on those monsters of his is good news. In my opinion, we should unleash those demons at our enemies, more specifically Konoha. Rinshi laughed out along with everyone around him. Interesting, Daisuke thought. Iwagakure holds the 4-tailed Biju and the 5-tailed Biju, right? Rinshi nodded before downing another cup of sake. Indeed, and from what I heard, Konoha's Jinchuriki has been missing for almost 4 years now. Rinshi confessed as Daisuke's eyes narrowed slightly. Quite a shame, really. They should have had a better leash on the thing. Before Daisuke could probe further, the lights of the area dim as Genshi appeared back on the slightly bloodied stage. And now, what all my ladies have been waiting for, I present you the next match. Tushin appeared on the stage with cocky smirk as some of the people chanted his name. The area got quiet as a spiky blonde man with red tips and whiskered marked cheeks slowly walked onto the stage with a lazy look in his eyes. He scratched at his blonde scruff that lightly covered the bottom of his face. He stood an easy 6 feet 2 and was currently shirtless, allowing the crowd to see his bare and muscular chest. He placed his fingerless gloved-covered hand into his black pants as he walked up to the center. Tushin of Iwagakure. Tushin raised a fist in the air as his other hand gripped his katana. And the champion himself, Naruto. At which the crowd got wild for him, especially the females of the crowd. Dash opening parenthesis closing parenthesis dash. Rinchi whistled. Well, this kid certainly got a fan base, but Tushin was a hunter nin. There's no way this brat could win against a true Iwagakure shinobi. 500 on Tushin. Rinchi called out, at which bets were being placed all over, most going for Tushin thanks to Rinchi's little bio of him. Daisuke narrowed his eyes at Naruto before it widened. Well, I be damn straight to hell. He grinned before fishing into his pockets. 800 on the brat. Rinchi gaped at his friend. Daisuke-san, you can't be serious spending you money on that brat. Do you even realize how bad this match looks for you? Rinchi sputtered out as Daisuke chuckled. I have a good feeling about this kid. Down on the stage. Alright, both fighters spin the wheel and pick your poison. Genshi instructed, and Tushin went first with mischievous grin. He spun the wheel and watched in unrestrained glee as he saw the pointer land on the katana picture. Well, if you look at that, seems like lucky is certainly on my side tonight. Tushin grinned out as he moved out of the way for Naruto to take a turn. The blonde womanizer gave the man a quick glare before spinning the wheel himself and having it land on a pair of fists. Naruto frowned as Tushin cackled. Bad luck, brat. I'm going to enjoy ruining that pretty face. And there you have it, folks. Tushin will have a katana while Naruto will have only his fist. I wish both fighters the best. Now please back to your corners. Genshi instructed as he made his way off the stage. That asshole cheated. Kira grunted out as Naruto stretched, earning some catcalls from the females above. He must have rigged it before the start of the battle. Damn it, brat, listen to me. Naruto, who was practically having with his eyes to a girl in the crowd, turned away from her and chuckled. Well then, stop being boring. This earned a growl from the war bear. Besides, me having a weapon would just be overkill. Kira just shook his head. I swear that cocky attitude is going to get your ass killed. Are both fighters ready? Genshi called from his place as Naruto winked to another girl in the crowd. Hajime. Naruto quickly ducked under the swing that would have lopped his head off. I'm going to enjoy killing you in front of your little fangirls. Tushin said darkly before going for another swing. Naruto jumped back and grinned before blocking a kick. Why? Mad I got one. The blonde taunted out, and Tushin growled before going for a side swipe of his sword. Naruto dodged to swing and laid a kick to his chest, which Tushin blocked with his sword. He pushed Naruto back and went for a straight jab, which Naruto grinned at. He grabbed onto sword, surprising Tushin slightly before pulling him in and giving the older man a hard headbutt to the face. Tushin staggered back before a kick straight to the face sent him to the ground. He tried to get up, but a punt kick to his stomach sent the older man flying away in pain. Naruto raised his arms with a grin and a laugh as the crowd got louder in approval. Dash opening parenthesis closing parenthesis dash. En nani. Rinchi stuttered out as Daisuke held a grin on his face. How the hell is that brat beating Tushin? It seems Tushin-san has been off the force for a long time. Daisuke said with a light chuckle as Rinchi continued to sputter. Damn it, brat. Finish him off. Kira said in his head as he saw Naruto joke around in the ring, not seeing Tushin slowly getting up or sending chakra through his sword. Kira just smacked his forehead in annoyance. I swear if no one will kill this brat, soon enough I will. Dash opening parenthesis closing parenthesis dash. Naruto knew Tushin was getting up, he just wanted to drag this out further. After all, this fight was over the moment he walked into the ring. The blonde flexed in front a group of teenage girls who swooned above him before they pointed behind him in terror. Confused, the blonde turned around only to be stabbed straight into the stomach by a bloodied and possibly crazed Tushin. Gah! He grunted out before he was kicked away by a cackling Tushin. You stupid brat! Tushin laughed out as the crowd got quiet as Naruto struggled to stand before he punched and then kneed in the stomach. Naruto held his abdomen in pain as blood came out from his wound. You could never take these games serious enough and now you'll die for it. He cackling got loud and the crowd roared in boos and cheers. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis dash. Ha ha. Rinchi laughed with relief in his face. I knew better than to judge Tushin-san so quickly. Well, sorry to say Daisuke-san, but this match is over and you owe us 800 ryo. Daisuke just calmly took another sip of sake with a grin on face. Now, councilman, you know better than to call a match so early. Rinchi looked confused and was about to ask Daisuke in what he meant before the gasp of the crowd caused him to look down at the supposed, finished, battle. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis dash. Tushin grinned through a bloody face as he took Naruto by the neck, who flinched in pain. Any last words, you little shit? Tushin said through a grin as he positioned his katana. Why, yeah, just a few. Is the S or the C silent in scent? He said with a grin, which Tushin gave him a confused look. Also, your grip on me should be tighter, like so. Naruto reached up to the wrist that was holding his neck and easy gripped it hard as the sound of bone breaking resounded through the area. Ah! Tushin cried as he fell on both knees and cradled his crushed hand. Naruto brushed off the dirt in him as the hole where katana pierced was closed and healed. Nani? What A are you? Naruto placed a hand on his chin in mock thought. Well, most women call me sexy, some call me handsome, and well, others refer to me as a god in the sheets. Naruto then bent down so he was eye to eye with Tushin. However, most people would call you dead. Tushin didn't even had a moment to plea before his head was kicked clean off his body. The body stood upright for a moment before quickly collapsing to the side. Naruto whistled at his work. Well, that certainly went better than last time. At least there's no blood on my leg. The crowd went wild in excitement as Naruto grinned and bowed to them. And there you have it, folks, you winner, Naruto. Genshi called out as a few men came on the stage to clean up the body. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis dash. And just like that, the battle is won. Daisuke grinned out as he collected his earnings from a still sputtering Rinchi. Come now, the boy is a champion for a reason, councilman. You should have not judged him so quickly. Come now, Daisuke. Rinchi sweated as he saw Daisuke put the last of his wins in a coin sack. You can't be honestly taking money from me. Well, you said it yourself, Councilman Rinchi. It's not every day you see savages tear each other apart for a sliver of money. Yane. Daisuke chuckled before disappearing in a shunshin, leaving Rinchi to glare at the spot he was at. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis dash. Ow! Naruto said as he rubbing the spot on his head where he got bopped. Next time don't waste my time. Kira grunted out before lighting another cigar. Would have left your ass there if I knew you was going to play around with Tushin. Naruto scoffed as he sat up at the bar as Kira got them drinks. The asshole had it coming, besides it was funny to see him think that he won. He then took a glance around the bar as there were quite a few people in there. Little busier than usual, shouldn't they be home or something? He asked while taking a cup of sake. This bar is practically open 24 hours. Kira said as he made a drink for a customer before giving it them. Besides, you won against Tushin. From what I heard, many people betted for him. Naruto gave a quick laugh as he eyed a female customer getting served. Wonder how much money they lost. More than they thought. Daisuke said as he took a spot next to Naruto. My name's Daisuke. Nice to meet the man that gave me one of the best show of my life. This earned a grunt from Kira. Try not to make the brat's head swell, it's already too big. Naruto flipped the big man off, which made Daisuke chuckle. Quiet the charmer. Only to the ladies. Naruto grinned before offering a cup of sake to Daisuke, who happily took it. If you don't mind me asking, Naruto-san, where did you learn that move to kill Tushin-san? It was so clean and perfectly executed. From a first glance I wouldn't suspect you of being a shinobi. Daisuke asked, and Naruto raised an eyebrow as his gaze went back over to the female customer who was beckoning him over. Daisuke saw the female and chuckled. Secrets or secrets, Daisuke-san? Naruto stood up with a bottle of sake and a devious smirk. Now if you excuse, I need to get my reward for the night. He bid Daisuke a good night before walking over to the female. In an alley. Anything to report? It seems Iwagakure is giving their Jinchurikis more freedom, but members of the War Council are persuading the Tsuchikage to use them against their enemies, more specially Konoha. Shit. That is not something we need right now. There's more too. Apparently they know that Konoha's Jinchurikis is gone. Damn it. Is there other bad news you got to tell me? It's definitely not bad news. I have found Naruto Uzumaki. Couple of days later in Konoha. And there's your mission objective. Tsunade said as she gave them all a serious but hopeful look. I would personally go with you if I wasn't needed much here. But please make this mission a success. She said almost pleadingly. Kurenai Yuhi nodded. Of course, Hokage-sama. We won't fail you. She looked over her team, which composed of her friend Anko Mitarashi due to the fact that Kiba caught the flu, Hinata Hyuga, and Sakura Haruno. She right, Shisho. We'll bring that big dummy home. Sakura said with a smile as she punched her hand. Besides, how hard is it going to be to convince him to come back? All we really have to do is promise him to be Hokage. She said with a hint of sarcasm. Hinata frowned a bit and ducked her head. Anyo, Sakura-chan, how do we know he's still the same Naruto-kun? Sakura placed her hands on her hip. Please, like that buffoon changed his mind on a goal that he had since he first started the academy. Anko grinned as she chewed on the dango stick that was in her mouth. The Gaki was a little cutie when he was young. He's sure to grow up into a fine young man, right, Nai-chan? She elbowed her best friend, who gave her an annoyed look. Really, Anko? She deadpanned as she saw Hinata's face heat up several shades of red. Sakura visibly blanched. Naruto cute. Never. Shaw. Sasuke-kun is 10 times hotter than Naruto baka. Inner Sakura said with a fist bump. A cough broke everyone out of their thoughts to see Tsunade looking at them expectantly. Shouldn't you be gone by now? And with that the 4 kunoichi vanished from her sight. Bring him back, she whispered as she gazed at a photo of her, Shizune, her old teammate, and a younger blonde-haired whiskered boy. Outside Konoha. So from the reports, Naruto rests in a village on the outermost skirts of Tsuchi no Kuni, meaning that once we cross over the Kusa-Tsuchi border, we must hide our Hitai Atesh. Kurenai commanded, and her team nodded as they sprinted through the trees. Anyo, sensei, why must we hide our Hitai Atesh? The third shinobi war has long since finished. Hinata asked timidly and quietly, to which Kurenai sighed sadly to herself. Well, Hinata-chan, while the third shinobi war has finished, there are still many people who harbor hate towards our village. Just like how there's people in Konoha who hate Kumo and Iwa. Kurenai explained, and Sakura scoffed. I don't see why they won't just forget about. I mean, what's done is done. Now it was Anko's turn to scoff. How would you feel if some powerful ninja leveled all of Konoha and killed your precious Sasuke-kun? Sakura frowned. I would hunt them down. Shaw. Inner Sakura agreed. You're no different than any of the Iwa nins who still hate us. Anko explained, and Sakura couldn't think of a comeback. Hinata looked up into the clear sky as her mind drifted off to one man. I'm coming, Naruto-kun. Dash opening parenthesis closing parenthesis dash. I'm coming, GG. She screamed as another orgasm came through her, leaving her an almost tired mess under him. Naruto kept picking up the pace as his grunts were overshadowed the sound of their skin slapping together. Don't get tired yet, he said through gritted teeth as he felt his end coming near. He pressed her back into his chest as he rammed up in her. She turned her head to give the blonde a sloppy kiss as he fondled her. Almost there. He's sure he fucked her stupid because right now, she was making incoherent sounds coming from her mouth. He felt the familiar sensation of released and pumped into her harder, shaking the bed hard enough to have it banging against the wall. Almost. There. He released his warm seed in her, causing her already dulled eyes to roll to the back of her head as she went limp in his arms. Settling them down and panting, Naruto grinned as he felt himself get hard due to his amazing stamina. The woman took a tired glance down before throwing an arm over her eyes. Is there an end? She asked and he chuckled. I guess I'm not doing my job good enough. He grinned and moved in to kiss her when the door slammed open to reveal and pissed Kira. How many times have I told you to stay away from my employees, especially my daughter? He yelled out as he cracked his knuckles. Naruto paled and chuckled uneasily. Kira. Buddy, pal, old friend. Nice morning, right? Oh shit. Naruto dodged a kunai and saw a murderous glint in his eyes. Beep. Beep. The blonde said before he vanished. Come back here, you horny bastard. A few days later. Team Kurenai couldn't help but sigh in relief as they finally made to Tetsushi village. After getting a hotel room from a man who couldn't keep eyes to himself, the four women discussed their plans in their room. Since it's nighttime and the men of this village seem to be very touchy-feeling, we'll cut the search shorter than usual. Try to avoid asking his name directly. The last thing we need is for someone to get curious of our mission. Anko, you and Sakura explore the southern district. I'm sure that's where you're gonna find a lot of bars, great to get information from. Anko grinned before fist bumping and throwing an arm over Sakura's shoulders. Alright, me and Pinky here are going to nip this in the bud. Her grin then widened. Maybe Mama will get a few free drinks out of it. Kurenai just sighed at her friend's antics. Try not to screw this up, Anko. She said with a light glare which Anko completely waved off. Oh, you have little faith in thee. Anyways, me and Hinata-chan will search the northern district. And here. She handed them each little microphones. If you got any information, make sure to send it through here. Be back here in 4 hours. They nodded before going their separate ways. With Naruto. Naruto sighed in annoyance. See, that's why I hate wearing shirts. He threw the tattered piece of cloth away before slumping down in a booth facing the entrance of the bar. Always getting in the damn way. Whatever, Naruto-kun, that's just an excuse to be shirtless so more women can gawk at you. She was a tall beauty with long flowing silver hair that reached mid-back with a few strands in the front. She had dark purple eyes and a small pale cute face. She had that were a few sizes below Tsunade's and a round bubble butt. And isn't it awesome, Sakuya-chan? He grinned out before she popped into his lap with a grin. My love competition, she said loud enough for the whole bar to hear. Some of the men gave Naruto jealous looks which Naruto only grinned at them. Of course you do, you attention-seeking baka. A voice called about before another person popped themselves into his lap. She was a light bronze beauty with short cyan hair that stopped at her chin. Her dark amber eyes glared at Sakuya, who just glared back. Naruto just coughed lightly with a smirk. Well, hello to you too, Rana-chan. Rana broke her staring match to cuddle with Naruto's cheek, earning a warning growl from the other female. Haven't seen you in a while, he said with a chuckle. Rana stopped cuddling to pout her lips. Well, Tsu-san still doesn't like you, so he made me travel with him to Yugito. He especially did it so that I couldn't watch you fight. He's still convinced that I will marry some rich asshole and not some brawler bum. She said sadly, and Naruto just held her tighter to him. Well, fuck him then. Nothing in the world is going to stop the Shinogemu champion from seeing his ladies. Naruto said proudly, which earned him a kiss on the cheek. Say it any louder and Cheru-san may come barging in here. Kira grunted out as he set 3 drinks down on the table before wiping his hands on his bar towel. I rather not have a repeat of last time. Naruto scoffed before reaching over and grabbing a drink. Please, like that old man has the balls to attack me, especially in this bar. No offense to Urana-chan, he said sheepishly, at which she laughed at. None taken, Naru-kun. An hour later, Sakura groaned in annoyance as she and a slightly swaying Anko walked out another bar. Damn it. Why are people in this damn town so tight-lipped? It's not like we're asking on how to kill a cage. Anko shrugged her shoulders. Maybe we're not trying harder enough. She giggled as they walked and Sakura sighed. Oh, I'm sure we're trying, if you being drunk any indication, she said with disapproval in her tone. Anko scoffed before standing up straighter. I'm not drunk, Pinky. Maybe a bit buzzed, but I'm smarter than that to get drunk on a very important mission. They stopped at the last bar in the district. It seemed to be further down from the rest of village. Sakura frowned at the nickname and took a glance at the bar. The den seems pretty busy this late at night. The 2 kunoichis walked in the bar and surprised to see that most of the customers were shinobis, contrasting differently from what they've seen in the other bars. They sat at the counter and ignored the looks from the men. Well, Sakura did. Anko just gave the men a bloodthirsty smirks that sent chills down some of their spines. There was a light banging sound coming from above them and also what seemed to sound like a female moan. Don't mind the sounds. Kunoichis turned to see that their bartender was a beautiful silver-haired woman. Her purple eyes held a light flirtatious manner. Tsu-san could never keep him quiet anyways. She said with a smile. My name is Sakuya. Can I start you ladies out with anything? Sakura grimaced and shook her head while Anko grinned. Sure thing. The strongest drink you got. Sakura resisted the urge to slap her forehead at her partner and just rolled her eyes. Sakuya smirked at the enthusiastic woman. My, are you sure about that? That drink is usually off limits unless you're challenging someone. In fact, the only person I know that can stomach the whole bottle is currently being preoccupied at the moment. She rolled her eyes at preoccupied as the banging got louder. Anko's eyes got a strange glint in them. Well, that's a challenge I would love to take. But for now I'll take a bottle of sake. Sakuya smiled and nodded at the purple nin before recovering the drink. Now I haven't seen you ladies around here. So what brings you here to Tetsushi and more specifically the den? As you can see, we're not a normal bar. The silver-haired woman prodded. Sakura took a glance at Anko, who was busy downing her drink. Well, we're here to get some information. Sakuya paused for a moment until an face-splitting grin come on her face and she leaned on the counter. What type of information? The next morning. Is this the place? Kurenai asked as the group of 4 females stood in front of the still busy bar Sakura and Anko visited the night before. Anko nodded with a smile as she led the group in. Of course, Nai-chan. Besides, I'm here for that challenge. The group stood for a moment until Anko waved over Sakuya. Ah, Anko-chan. I see you return for that challenge, no doubt. She said excitedly as she looked at the 2 new females. Oh, where are my manners? I'm Sakuya and welcome to the den. She would have finished if a body of a man hadn't crashed at her feet. She sighed annoyingly. Not again. She nudged the man with a foot, earning a groan from him. At least he's alive this time. The 4 kunoichi jumped at the deep voice and turned around to see the biggest and most muscular man they have ever seen. His graying brown hair was tied into a short ponytail and his lone steel gray eye seemed to be in a permanent glare. He had a scar that ran down from his closed right eye, across his face and stopped at the side of his lips. Anko and Kurenai immediately recognized him as Kanado Kira, also known as the War Bear of Tsuchi. Sakuya, not fazed by his appearance, looked down at the unconscious man. So what happened? Kira grunted out what seemed to be a chuckle before easily picking the man up and tossing him outside the bar. He saw the brat with Rana-san before deciding to pull a move. and touch her ass. The men around them shook their heads and whistled. I'm sure he was new to the village. He grunted out with a shrug before looking down at the four kunoichis. This doesn't happen much, but Sakuya, why are they not being tended to? The purple-eyed beauty smirked before pointing at Anko. This brave soul wants to challenge the stud to a drinking contest. With the drink you got from that country you visited out of the elemental nations. Kira snorted and peered down at the kunoichi in question. I don't think you know what you're getting into. Anko just gave the man a smirk and pointed at herself. And you don't know who you're talking to. She said arrogantly, which caused Kurenai and Sakura to shake their head and Sakuya to giggle. Hinata took a nervous glance around the bar and tilted her head curiously as she saw that one part of the bar was covered with men cheering someone on. Kira gave an amused grunt. Well, if you think you're up to the challenge, I'll get it prepared for you. Sakuya. The woman nodded and went over to the crowd of cheering men. Kira then jabbed a thumb at a table. Have a seat there. Anko took seat while Kurenai just sighed disappointingly at her. Anko, we don't have time for drinking games. We have a mission, remember. Unless you want to tell Tsunade-sama how we came up empty-handed. Anko just waved off the threat with a chuckle. Have some faith, for once. Besides, this is going to be fun. Some of the men in the bar gathered around the table as Kira set down 4 tall bottles of the mysterious alcohol. Only 4. Kira chuckled. Trust me, that's a stretch. Sakuya, where's the brat? Hold on to your fucking pants, old man. A male voice called out before plopping down in the seat with a yawn. The kunoichis gasped as they saw the man. It's not my fault that some dumbass wants to die early. He trailed off as his eyes widened when he finally got a look at his opponent in her group. After getting over the initial shock of seeing the familiar group of kunoichi, Naruto called off the challenge and was immediately bombarded by questions, mainly from Sakura. He was back in his familiar booth with Rana and Sakuya cuddling up to his side, which earned an internal glare from Hinata. If I told you the whole story, then we would never leave this bar, and I got a tournament to win soon. He said as he took a chug from his drink. But here's my question, why are you here? We're here to get you back, baka. Sakura declared proudly, which Naruto just scoffed with a small chuckle. Get me back. I never left, he said with a mocking grin, and the 2 girls on his side giggled. What are you guys talking about anyways? Naru-kun's home is here and not anywhere else, Rana said with a wide smile as she laid a kiss on his cheek. Sakura frowned as she glared at the petite beauty. Yeah, right. This baka's dream is to become Sakura, Kurenai said sternly, which quickly shut the pink-haired kunoichi up. Look, Naruto, Tsunade-sama requested that you come back. She immediately got to the point and Naruto frowned. For what reason? It's plainly obvious that there's nothing there for me. It would just be a waste of time. He then pulled the girls tighter to him, which they laid on his chest. Besides, my reputation here has so much more benefits. He grinned out. The 3 kunoichis glared at his meaning while the last one was glare at the 2 girls on his chest. Why would you put your pleasure over the needs of the village? Sakura practically yelled at him with clenched fists, and the blonde womanizer rolled his eyes. Because it's fun, he said with a devious grin before he stood up easily, towering over the 4 kunoichis. The village was boring. I needed excitement in my life. He walked over to the bar and grabbed a random bottle of alcohol. So fucking whores is your definition of excitement? Sakura yelled out, and the members of the bar froze. Some of the men backed away closer to the exit while Sakuya and Rana glared at the insult. Naruto stopped drinking before tilting his head in wonderment. Had I been the Uchiha, would your attitude towards me be any different? He said with a glare as Sakura froze. Of course it would, but I'm glad I'm not the asshole, because then I would have to worry about you being on my. Then drowned the whole bottle and tossing it away before walking back over to his booth. Naruto, Kurenai said slowly. Tsunade-sama honestly looked desperate for your help. Anko nodded in agreement. Yeah, I've never seen a woman so hopeful over a piece of news. If you're not going to do this for the village, then do it for Tsunade-sama. Naruto paused and looked at them for a moment before throwing a still glaring Rana and Sakuya over his shoulders, earning squeaks of surprise for them. You'll have my answer after the tournament's finals tonight. Sakura looked ready to say something, but Naruto beat her to the punch. And only then. He then walked up the stairs with a now giggling Rana and a smirking Sakuya. Don't bother the brat now, Kira said as he blew a puff of smoke out from his cigar. Here, on the house. He placed a bottle of sake on the table. Your best bet is to bother him after the tournaments. Kurenai looked at the bottle with a small frown as Anko took the bottle with a grin. And what is this tournament, Kira-san? Later that night, Iron Maiden. A man screamed as his head was crushed between the big paws of a huge hairy man. The lifeless body fell back with a thud as the now bloody man beast raised his fist in victory. Winner. Yosin of Yugakure. Genshi called out from his place. This is awesome, Anko said with stars in her eyes as Kira chuckled at her. Indeed, the games, while brutal, is incredibly fun to watch, Sakuya said with a grin. But when my stud gets up there, it's all over, she said with her own stars in her eyes. So what's the objective? Kurenai asked. Just to kill each other. Kira nodded with a grin. You think it would be that easy, but these men would literally do anything to win. And the prize is 1 million ryo. Rana said with a smile. Naru-kun has won the past 2 games and he'll do it tonight. Sakura just frowned. To think that people would watch others get killed for money is sicking. Well, news flash princess, it's a dog-eat-dog world out here. Sakuya said with an eye roll as the crowd began to get quiet. Finally, the stud is about to come on. In the ring. Are you serious? Genshi quietly yelled at the messenger. The crowd is literally going to have my balls for this. The messenger just shrugged and ran off the stage. Genshi cursed to himself before clearing his throat. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it seems the games have changed. The crowd started to boo and Genshi felt himself getting sweaty. Yes. Due to the death of Benzi a couple of minutes ago, we shall proceed to championship match. Well, that's new. Kira grunted before making eye contact with Naruto, who did a head jab at the big man beast. Do you know what happened to San? Sakuya asked, and the war bear nodded with a grunt as he lit another cigar. Well, it seems like Yosin-san lacks any patience. Kurenai raised an eyebrow in confusion as she understood the meaning. So he killed Naruto's opponent. Shouldn't he get disqualified? Kira just smirked as he blew out another smoke ring. Then there wouldn't be a match, and trust me, that's all the villagers live off on. This whole place would be chaotic if they would call the match off, and besides, he turned his attention to the blonde that was now being introduced. We don't believe in disqualification. The ring. Now pick your poison, Genshi proclaimed as he motioned the wheel. Naruto went first and waited in bated breath as the wheel stopped on a pair of knuckles. The blonde champion grinned and watched as Yosin moved the wheel to a warhammer. The crowd booed at the blatant cheating as Yosin cackled manically. Well, there you have it, folks. Naruto shall be using a pair of knuckles while Yosin will have a warhammer. I wish each of you of luck. Now please back to your corners. Genshi gave Naruto an apologizing look and then ran off the stage. Naruto walked back to his corner as Kira handed him a box with a frown on his face. Yosin is giving the producers a headache. Be careful, brat. I don't want to clean your remains off the stage. Listen to Tsu-san, Naruto-kun. I want you to come home with a safety. Sakuya pleaded and Rana nodded next to her. The blonde just gave then a chuckle. You guys shouldn't worry, besides this is going to be fun. He then opened the box and pulled out a pair of pitch black ebony carved knuckles. He whistled and grinned at Kira. Do I even want to know? Kira grunted. Had a good gut feeling is all. If both fighters are ready. Naruto slipped on his knuckles and gave the group a wink before walking to the center. Yosin swung his hammer multiple times with a crazed grin on his face. Hijame. Rahh. Yosin yelled out as he quickly appeared with a downward swing. Naruto quickly rolled to the side and sent a punch out to the man-beast's face. Yosin grinned as he dropped his hammer and quickly grabbed a surprised Naruto in a bear hug. Yosin is going to crush puny man. He bellowed out. He then started strengthening his grip on the blonde, who cursed as he felt his bones giving way. Give off me. An invisible force pushed Yosin away, causing Naruto to fell on the floor with a thud. Alright, not letting that happen again. The blonde told himself as he slowly got back to his feet, only to jump back from an axe handle. Yosin yelled as he went for another swing and then another and then another. Naruto let out an annoyed sigh and he dodged each attack. This guy is not letting me get on the offense. He jumped over a strike and landed a kick to the large man's face. Yosin staggered back and Naruto took this time to jump on the large man's shoulders and land an elbow on top of the man's head. Yosin roared in pain and grabbed Naruto, slamming him into the ground. Ow! Naruto groaned before that became a yelp of pain as Yosin jumped on his legs. Fuck. The shirtless blonde couldn't feel his legs and rolled to the side to avoid another stomp. Yosin laughed in triumph. Yosin crushed puny man's leg and now Yosin will tear puny man apart. In Naruto's corner. Well, that's not good. Kira frowned before he stopped the kunoichis from intervening, especially the quiet purple-haired one. Oh no, you don't. What the hell? Let us go help him before he get his ass killed. Sakura as she prepared to punch the living daylights out of the large muscular man. We can't watch him die. Kira didn't move from his spot or was fazed by the killer intent the Konoha nins were directing at him. There are to be no outside help. Those are the rules. Anko rolled her eyes. You said it yourself. Yosin cheated twice. If he could do it, then we could easily do it as well. Kira grunted before spitting out his useless cigar. Well, you're right, little lady, but here's 2 reasons why I won't you through. 1. That brat is lot stronger than you think in what he puts on. He just likes to play with his opponents. And 2. If you interfere, the brat will take that as a blow to his pride. Trust me, he takes that to heart. 2-san is right, Sakuya said as she watched Naruto quickly crawl back from a strike of Yosin's hammer. The reason that me and Rana Baka are not so worried is because we trust our stud. If you were his friends, then I believe you would trust him too. Woo Naru-kun. Rana cheered out. Hurry up and kick his ass so that you can take my ass tonight. She shouted shamelessly. In the ring, Naruto gritted his teeth as he held the large foot of Yosin from crushing him. Haha, die weak man. The large man cackled out as he added more weight to his foot. Naruto stopped struggling as the words of Rana reached his ears. And there you have it. He grinned as held a pointer finger out to Yosin. How do you feel about fire? A tiny fireball appeared in front of his finger before it flew and exploded in Yosin's face. Yosin stumbled backwards as he held his face and roared in pain. Naruto smiled as he slowly but shakingly stood on his feet and thanks his impressive healing factor. The crowds gasped and then broke out in cheers as their champion grinned at them. The blonde then turned and winked at his girls in his corner. He heard a growl and turned back to Yosin only to be tackled away. Naruto landed on his feet and wiped the blood that escaped his face. All right, big guy. Yosin growled as his half-blackened face gave the grinning blonde a glare. I think I know how to take you down. He took a glance around the ring as his eyes landed on his knuckles. Only problem was that they were all the way in Yosin's corner of the ring. Yosin roared in anger as he charged at Naruto, warhammer in hand. The blonde rolled under the swing and punched the earth below him. Yosin was launched back by a sprouting piece of rock. Naruto took this time to quickly ran over to his knuckles, slipping them on. He ducked under the thrown warhammer. Alright, time to end this. Flames surrounded the knuckles and Naruto charged at the large man. He ducked under a sloppy fist and sent an fiery uppercut to the man-beast's face. He then sent a hard jab into his stomach, causing Yosun to bend over, allowing Naruto hit head with a left hook that knocked some of his teeth out. Seeing how Yosun was not down yet, the blonde womanizer sent a fiery kick to his chin that sent the man back with loud thud. The crowd went wild with cheers as Naruto stood over Yosun in victory. His fiery fists were in the air as he grinned. In Naruto's corner, "Woo, that's my stud," Rana and Sakuya called out with twin grins on their faces. The two girls were obviously thinking about rewarding their champion if the twin blushes were any indication. Sakuya actually giggled perversely. The kunoichis looked on with relieved looks. "It finally over," Kurenai said with a sigh. "Boy, if Tsunade were to find out that Naruto got himself killed, there would no telling what the blonde Hokage would have done." Kurenai internally shuddered at the thought. "So why hasn't the announcer called for the match?" Hinata asked timidly as she just wanted to hurry up and get to Konoha. Kira grunted out what sounded like a chuckle. "That's because the match is not over." In the ring, Naruto rubbed his scruff in thought as the crowd chanted his name. "Got any ideas on how to finish you?" He jumped off Yosun's stomach and made his way around to his large and burned head. He nudged the head with his foot, which earned a groan from him. "Great idea," the blonde said jokingly before he walked over to Yosun's corner and grabbed the warhammer. The blonde easily lifted it up on his shoulders and whistled his way to Yosun. Standing in front of his head, the blonde placed the warhammer in both of his hands. "Now don't take this the wrong way, but your face definitely needs a makeover. Tell Tushin that's he's a bitch." Naruto then slammed the large hammer on Yosun's face, causing pieces of human flesh and blood to spew everywhere. The crowd cheered wildly as the headless body twitched for a second before becoming still for good. Naruto looked down at his body with a grimace. "Damn it, I like these pair of pants." He dropped the hammer with clang next the crushed face of Yosun. "Ladies and gentlemen, the winner and still champion, Naruto." The crowd chanted and yelled out his name as the blonde champion laughed and raised a fist in the air. "Now the match is over," Kira said with a grin as he laughed at the green faces of the two younger kunoichis. Later that night, the den. "I'm the mighty Yosun, no one can defeat me." The men around laughed with drink in their hands as they watched an reenactment by two extremely drunken men. "I will defeat you, Yosun-san, for I'm the womanizer of the South, the great Naruto." The men laughed again as one of the more drunken men went for a fake punch. The Yosun actor fell down with a laugh. Naruto just laughed from his spot as he took a sip from his drink before turning a glance at the four kunoichi, two of which had their own drinks. "You guys forgot the best part. You know the part where I made him scream like a little girl." The bar erupted in laughter. "I'll have to say, Naruto, that was a brutal but impressive fight," Kurenai said while Anko grinned. What Nai-chan means to say was that the fight was fucking awesome, the snake mistress said, which earned a grin from the blonde. "Those attacks with the fire was amazing." "What was that anyways?" Sakura asked as Naruto opened a new bottle. "Secrets are secrets for a reason, but I guess you'll have to learn about it when I go back to Konoha," the blonde said with a widening grin as the words he said finally registered in their minds. "Yeah, I know what I just said, but there is a condition." Kurenai frowned. "A condition, and what would that be?" "I'll go by myself." A week later, Tsunade sighed in exhaustion for what seemed to be the 10th time today. Damn paperwork. Her eyes quickly took a glance at the picture she had on her desk. She stopped signing her signature and picked up the small frame. A small smile graced her lips as she looked at the grinning blonde boy with 3 whisker marks on each cheeks. It's been almost a week since Kurenai's team returned without Naruto. While hearing that the blonde knucklehead was alive and well, Tsunade couldn't help but be angry at Kurenai's team for not bringing him back. It took all the willpower and maturity in her being not to lash out right there. But Kurenai promised that he would be here soon, it was only a matter of time. However, the buxom Hokage was not known for her patience. It was only the constant reassurance of her assistant and apprentice, Shizune, that she didn't run out of Konoha to nab the little bastard herself. But that didn't mean she didn't have other ways. Neko, Tora, Kuma. 3 Anbu members appeared kneeling in front of the Hokage. Yes, Hokage-sama. The Anbu captain, Neko asked. A mission regarding the return of Uzumaki Naruto didn't succeed like I wanted. I want him to be pampered and given a back massage because the road to Konoha is a hellish one. All 4 quickly got into a defensive stance as the intruder laughed. You must have a death wish intruding into the Hokage's office. Tsunade said harshly, which made the mysterious intruder laugh harder. I'll just assume you're crazy instead. To be honest, that's not the first time someone told me that. A figure then appeared in front of the 4 defensive nins, earning a gasp from the Hokage and an almost silent gasp from the Neko Anbu. Then again, I've been called many things. Naruto. Tsunade whispered out. The blonde grinned as he held out his arms. Well, are you going to stand there or are you going to give me a hug? He was then bopped hard in the head before he was engulfed into a warm and tight hug by the in tears Hokage. He hugged her back with a small sincere smile. I missed you, Tsunade. Tsunade broke the hug to get a good look at the blonde knucklehead, and she honestly wished that she was a few decades younger. He certainly grew, if his tall height was any indication. His hair was still that spiky blonde, and the 3 whiskers were being slightly hidden by the blonde scuff the blonde grew on his face. He wore a mesh tank top with a black sleeveless jacket over it that was open to show the man's spectacular muscles. He had on black cargo pants and standard black shinobi sandals. Naruto saw that the busty Hokage was observing him and took the chance to scope out the Hokage. Still the biggest pair of tits I've seen, he thought with a smirk before coughing to get the Hokage's attention. As much as I would love to continue hugging you, we got some catching up to do. Tsunade had a light blush on her face and cleared her throat. Ah yes. She dismissed her Anbu, but not missing the long glance Neko took at Naruto before they disappeared, and Tsunade sat herself in her chair. Naruto grinned and sat in the chair in front of the Hokage's desk and kicked his feet up on it. His smile widened as he saw the buxom Hokage roll her eyes. So mind explaining where you were for 4 years, or more importantly why you left? Tsunade said, getting straight to the point, and Naruto only chuckled at her as he rubbed his scruff. Well, I've been all over the elemental nations and recently resided in Tsuchi no Kuni for the past 3 years. As for why I left, I honestly got tired of dealing with the village's shit, from its asshole of villagers to the raging fangirls. I wanted excitement in my life, something that made me feel alive. Tsunade rose an eyebrow in confusion. But why Tsuchi of all places? But then it dawned on her. It made it easier for you to hide, didn't it? Bingo. Naruto laughed out. Besides, have you ever heard of the Shi no Gemu? Tsunade held a surprised look. Yeah, brutal games for money that only savages would participate in. Well, I would necessarily call myself a savage, even though I think about and do as fuck, drink, fight and repeat, but not in that order, of course. He said with a wide grin. That's the main reason why I chose Tushi. It was only a plus when I learned that you Konoha nins were hesitant to enter the country. Naruto placed his feet off the table and grabbed Tsunade's open bottle of sake. He shook the bottle before smiling and downing all the contents. Tushi also has stronger sake. Nice if you want to pass out. Tsunade smiled back. Never took you for a drinker, brat. Naruto gave a small frown at the nickname and just chuckled. Many women wouldn't think of me as a brat, Tsunade. He grinned with an almost hidden meaning. Tsunade had a pink tint on her face, earning a devious grin from the blonde womanizer. Anyways, what's so bad about the village that you sent a search team out for me? Many reasons actually. She grumbled. For one, the council wasn't still hounding my ass to declare you a missing nin. Of course, when I brought up the Uchiha brat, they just screamed how he was just kidnapped. She rubbed her forehead in annoyance. I swear that's the start of every meeting. Naruto just rolled his eyes and scoffed. I could have guessed that. After all, when I was young, the council members had nothing better to do than ride my ass. Tsunade chuckled before getting serious again. We've gotten reports of Aiwa becoming allies with the Otokage. Naruto raised an eyebrow. The hell is an Otokage? The leader of the Sound Village. You fought some of his nins for the retrieval of the Uchiha. Tsunade said as she reached under desk to pull out another bottle of sake. So you're telling me that Aiwa, who hates Konoha, joined forces with a village whose leader is on Konoha's most hated person list. Not only that, the Uchiha joined with the snake who promised him the death of his batshit crazy brother as long as Sasuke does his bidding. Naruto closed his eyes and crossed his arms as he let out a sigh. Tsunade, this sounds like a pre-war strategy. The blonde Hokage nodded and took a swig from her bottle. And let's not get started on the Akatsuki. You see why we needed you back. Naruto chuckled before getting up from his seat. Well then, I guess exciting things are going to be happening soon. He made his way over to door before turning back around. Well, you can count me in. He went to open the door when Tsunade called out to him. Wait. He turned around to catch a hit and saw a small smile on Tsunade's face. Be at Training Ground 7 tomorrow for an evaluation and, welcome back Naruto. An hour later. Oh come the on. The blonde womanizer muttered to himself as walked in search of a, good enough, bar to get wasted and hopefully get a good lay. He tried to go back to his old apartment only to find that it was destroyed and being remodeled. But of course it had to be where he lived. Now he was in search of a bar that A. didn't look like someone died inside or B. wasn't filled with pompous assholes. He stopped at what seemed to be a shinobi-only bar if the people wearing their hitai inside were any indication. But should I? He asked himself before shrugging. Gotta get drunk somehow. He went inside and quickly made his way over to the counters. Whatcha want? The bartender gruffly asked as he cleaned a glass. He had an eye patch over his left eye and a thick beard. The man sort of reminded Naruto of Kira in some way. What's the strongest thing you got? The man paused and grumbled before searching under the counters and then pulled out a bottle of clear liquid with the initials, e.g., on it. Naruto gave the man a look. You asked and I got it. Naruto shrugged and paid for the drink. The man grunted and walked away. Try not to kill you liver. He mumbled out before taking the order of another customer. Naruto opened the bottle and took a whiff, finding that it was odorless. The blonde grinned before taking a swig. The liquid burned almost like fire and Naruto cleared his throat as he looked at the bottle. Nice to see that the man wasn't an all-round asshole. The womanizer then looked around the bar for his next objective as his eyes laid on the body of a familiar kunoichi. Kurenai sighed in annoyance as she glared at another man that tried to catcall her. I swear, can't a woman get a moment of peace? She mumbled as she took a sip of her wine. In a world where everybody is either trying to kill you or you, I think not. Kurenai turned her head to see a grinning Naruto who held a strange bottle in his hand. He jabbed his head at the seat in front of her. Mind if I take a seat? Kurenai shook her head and Naruto plopped down with a grin. So what doing here of all places? Kurenai just raised an eyebrow. I'm guessing the same thing you're doing, Naruto, getting a few drinks. Naruto chuckled and took another swing of his drink. Kurenai watched him with a frown. I see that you've become almost too familiar with drinking. I hope your time in Tsuchi was well spent. Naruto paused his drinking as he gave the Crimson Beauty a look. Actually it was. I didn't fight all the time, only was the games came around and that's once every year. And probably compared to you records Kurenai, that is not that much. And besides it's nice to be in a place where I'm not having to watch my back or given a glare every time I breathe. He said with annoyance clear in his voice. Kurenai then sagged her shoulders as she felt guilty and let out a sigh. I'm sorry Naruto. It's just from what I've gathered in Tetsuuchi, You are nothing more than a womanizer who slept with any woman you could find and then fought like a savage. You asked people in the northern district, didn't you? More especially you asked the assholes and nobles. Kurenai nodded and Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Well, I certainly can't hate them for blaming me, after all their wives always fantasize and talk about me. But contrary to popular belief, I don't sleep with every woman I see. I mean, I have a set of rules and standards to follow. Now this piqued Kurenai's interest. Rules and standards. Of course, for example, he took a sip of his drink. They have to have respect for their bodies, and you'd be surprised with how many don't. Kurenai rolled her eyes as she took a sip of her wine. I may have an idea. Naruto then jabbed a finger in her direction. Women like yourself are my dream goal. Kurenai blushed at the honesty in his voice, something she doesn't get often with most men that try to get in pants. I mean, when I first took a glance at you, I had to actually stop myself. How I managed to get Rana or Sakuya to be with me is still a wonder, but you are so out of my league. Don't get me wrong though, I will kill anyone who tries to hurt them, all the consequences. He swayed a bit before leaning his head on his hand. Kurenai was actually a little shocked at his confession. Rana and Sakuya. The only women I've slept with. No, but they are the only women I'll confine myself to. He blinked away the spots in his vision before looking at his drink and setting it on the table. But there's something weird about you. About me? She asked curiously, and the tipsy blonde nodded. What about me? Well, your attitude for one screams hatred at perverts and men who only think with their, and I totally get that, some men are. He then stopped swaying and gave the kunoichi a devious smirk. But ever since we met, and even now, I've smelt something familiar on you. Rana and Sakuya always have the scent, especially when we are getting ready to. Kurenai gave him look before looking down at her empty glass. The blonde passed his drink to her, which she looked at him before pouring some of it in her glass. Thanks, and what's this smell? The door slammed open as their tangled and drunken bodies came slipping in. Their mouths on each other as clothes were quickly being shed and thrown to some unknown places. He picked her up as her strong legs wrapped themselves around his waist, his lips quickly going to her neck. She tilted her head back on the wall they suddenly were on. She moaned at the feel of his lips as her hands quickly went to his hair. He grinned against her neck as he heard her moan. He quickly separated them from the wall and threw her on the bed, earning a surprise squeal from her. She leaned up on her elbows and gave the man a sensual smirk as she ran her eyes all over his body. He chuckled and slowly unbuttoned his pants and slid down the zipper. He then walked over to her bed and crawled over her. Their eyes darkened with lust as their lips quickly reattached. Her hands rubbed his bare stomach before going inside his lower garments. He mashed their bodies together and slowly grinded into her warming heat. The next morning, Naruto slowly cracked open his eyes as he was getting hit by the sun's annoying rays. He slowly gazed around the room before hearing a soft moan on top of him. He looked down to see a mass of black hair on his chest and a familiar warm feeling down in his lower area. He would have rubbed his eyes if both weren't being preoccupied. One arm was trapped underneath the women while the other was holding the bottle of the strange alcohol from the night before. And that's when it hit him. He, Naruto Uzumaki, the champion of the Shi no Gemu, had one of Konoha's and probably Hai no Kuni's most beautiful in women. A shit-eating grin came to his face as he relaxed back into the pillow. He shook the bottle and chuckled as he heard the sound of liquid in the bottle. He took a careful swig as Kurenai started to stir. She seemed to pause before slowly look up to see a grinning Naruto. Slept well, he said with a grin. She glared harshly at the blonde, earning an eyebrow raise in confusion. What? Something on my face? Give me one good reason why I shouldn't place you in genjutsu where I'm cutting off you. She threatened with a low growl. The blonde shrugged as he took a sip from the bottle. Well, I could give you a couple. One is that genjustice, unless they're like super strong, mostly from a demon and a powerful nin, won't and will not affect me. I don't know how, they just won't. 2 is that you shouldn't act stupid. You know exactly what happened last night. We both do, we were not shit-faced drunk like how I planned to be. And finally 3, he gave a thrust of his hips and the strong front Kurenai had quickly dissolved as she moaned from the action. You fell asleep with me still in you after we for a couple of hours. He finished with a grin as Kurenai looked away from the blonde in shame. Naruto did an eye roll as he removed himself from Kurenai. Oh come on, was I really that bad? He said with a slight whine. The crimson-eyed Kunoichi blushed as she looked back at the now frowning blonde. No, it's just that, she started and Naruto raised an eyebrow as he stood up from the bed showing the world his glory. Kurenai got a good look at the blonde's ass and her blush increased. Naruto stretched and turned back around to the equally Kunoichi whose eyes moved down. Just what? You're ashamed to sleep with me. He stopped and tilted his head. Was I your first time? Is there another man? Kurenai internally cursed herself as her blush got dark enough to match her eyes. And no, and. She took a pause before shaking her head. No. I just feel guilty. She confessed with a sigh. Naruto scratched at his scruff before sitting back down on the bed. Guilty. You're not the first older women I've slept with, he said with annoyance as he laid back down with his drink in hand. Kurenai shook her head. No, I mean, there's a friend of mine that really likes you. I feel guilty because I slept with you, because I betrayed her trust. She looked down at her fingers. Well, that's incredibly stupid, Naruto said honestly as he set the bottle on her nightstand and sat up in the bed. Now before you yell at me for being insensitive, just think about it. You should feel guilty and shitty because you wanted to enjoy yourself. This friend of yours has probably never even confronted me, but yet that makes me off the market from beautiful women like yourself. Yeah, that. Kurenai's shoulders sagged as the blonde did raise some good points, but that didn't make her feel any better. Is this the part where I'm supposed to feel better? She said in an almost defeated tone. Naruto grinned as he brought the Kunoichi closer to his body, their noses touching. No, this is the part where you hard enough to break this damn bed. He whispered huskily and growled as he smelled her increasing arousal. You smell delicious. And that did it for Kurenai as she crashed their lips together. Their tongues battle for dominance as Naruto moved them so that he was on top. But do you feel better now? He said with a cheeky grin. Kurenai's arms wrapped around his neck as her eye darkened with lust. Just at which Naruto chuckled and went straight for her neck and one of hands slowly slid its way down to her dripping womanhood. She moaned loudly at the stimulation and decided to go on the offensive too. Naruto grinned as her hand wrapped around and pumped his growing erection. Her arousal was too much for the blonde as he growled lowly and grabbed both of her arms before placing them above her head. Using his free hand, he guided himself into her entrance, earning a whimper from the beauty under him. She wrapped her legs around him as he thrusted inside of her. Her whimpers turned to moans, which then turned into gasps as he worked his way inside of her. Naruto, on the other hand, was controlling himself not to explode like a virgin. While Rana was tighter and Sakuya was lot more flexible, Kurenai seemed and felt like she was literally milking him. He gritted his teeth as he pumped harder and harder into her. He let go of her arms, allowing her rake at his back. One of his hands grabbed at her headboard as it banged against the wall and crushed part of it under his hand. He suddenly grinned as an idea popped into his head and he flipped them over so the Kurenai was on top. Have your wicked way with me. He chuckled out and Kurenai took no time to grind and ride him. Naruto placed one hand on her hip as the other reached for the drink on the nightstand. Unnoticed by the two lovers, an intruder walked inside Kurenai's house and was watching them in glee and lust. Well, Naruto did notice but was entirely too busy to bring himself and Kurenai to sweet release. He felt the familiar feeling of tightness in his lower area and pumped harder into Kurenai. Naruto Uzumaki never came first and he was damn sure going to keep that promise no matter how great Kurenai felt. He felt her tighten as she gasped and shivered in pleasure and slumped over a bit. Knowing that she just came, Naruto finally let the dam burst and unloaded himself inside with a grunt. Kurenai finally slumped over and fell on Naruto's chest, putting them in a familiar position. That, she said through gasps and pants, was hot. Kurenai quickly twirled her head to see the last person she ever wanted to see in this position. Naruto looked over lazily and chuckled. "Sup, Anko?" he said nonchalantly as Kurenai tried to hide in his chest. "Nice morning we're having. Damn it, Nai-chan, if I knew you were going to this blonde stud, I would have done it while we were in that damn village." Anko pouted as she crossed her arms. Kurenai just blushed harder and pushed more into his chest, earning a chuckle from the blonde. Anko then looked around the room and whistled as she gazed at the bed. "Well shit, you might want to get a new bed, Nai-chan," she said as she laughed. "Damn it, Anko. What the hell do you want?" Kurenai finally yelled with the blush on her face never fading. This just made Anko laugh harder and Kurenai huffed in anger and annoyance. Naruto yawned as he got up from the bed and the laughter in the room immediately stopped. Now it was Kurenai's turn to giggle as she saw her best friend turn red as she gazed on Naruto's friend. Naruto sniffed the room and growled enough to break Anko out of her trance. "Unless you came in this room to get back to sleep, what can we do for you?" he asked in a low voice that actually caused both women to shiver in pleasure. He then looked Anko up and down before grinning. "Unless that was your plan all along." Anko gulped as she tried to think about why she was here in the first place. Tsunade-sama sent me to get Nai-chan. Apparently there's some evaluation." Naruto's eyes widened before he looked at the clock on Kurenai's nightstand. "Shit. Training ground 7. Tsunade sighed in annoyance as her assistant giggled. "I hope Naruto-kun didn't pick up Kakashi-san's tardiness," Shizune said as Tun-Tun oinked happily in her arms. The busty Hokage just rubbed her forehead as she thought back to her meeting with the whiskered male. "After seeing him, I won't be surprised," she drawled out, and a bearded Konoha nin next to her chuckled as he took the drag from his cig. "I'm more surprised that Kurenai-chan is late," Sarutobi Asuma said with a small smile. "Yosh. Kurenai's flames of youth just haven't woken her up yet. If my flames of youth were ever to dull, I shall run 100 laps. No 200, 300. I think we get it, guy." Asuma deadpanned as he tried not to laugh at Tsunade's twitching eyebrow. Just then a silver-haired nin with his nose deep within a certain book appeared in a poof of smoke. Asuma just grinned. "Well, someone came to the party early." The nin looked up briefly from his book before look around and trying his best to avoid Tsunade's burning stare. "Where's Kurenai and Naruto?" "Late," Tsunade said through gritted teeth. "And would you please throw away that damn book?" Kakashi only scratched his hair. My, I would never imagine Kurenai being late." "Shut up already, Anko," came the yell from Kurenai as laughter from two people could be heard. The nins turned to see a interesting sight. A red-faced Kurenai was yelling at a grinning Anko who situated herself on Naruto's back. The blonde womanizer seemed to be laughing at whatever Anko had said, making Kurenai's blush darken. When they finally made up to the rest of the older nins, Anko removed herself from Naruto as Kurenai's blush decreased, but a slight red tint still remained on her cheek. "Nice for you to finally join us," Tsunade said with a light glare, and Naruto just chuckled. "You're not going to get an apology from me. Besides, I'm not late. Guys are just early." The surrounding nins chuckled before a growl from Tsunade made them look away with a smile on their faces. "Alright, so what's this evaluation?" Tsunade cleared her throat. "It's just a little test to see where you are." Naruto just scratched his chest before looking around. "So I'm going to fight for Junin." He almost deadpanned and Tsunade almost felt a headache forming. "Like I said, brat, it's only to see how much you changed." If Tsunade didn't love Naruto as much as she did, he would be probably get punched to the next town over. It's way too early for this bullshit. Naruto mumbled before giving Tsunade a pleading look. Can't I just show you all the important shit and we can skip the rest of this bullshit? Language Naruto. Kakashi chuckled out as he finally looked up from his book to see his grown student give him a look of annoyance. And this is coming from the person who reads porn in public. The blonde then smirked. At least I learned how to get the real thing. Asuma and Anko laughed though for different reasons as Kurenai, and surprisingly Tsunade and Shizune blushed. Kakashi gave his student a surprised look as he started to stutter. Guy. Well, Guy looked at Naruto with flames in his eyes. Kakashi, your student has out-hip you. His flames of youth burns brightly. Guy all but yelled, which made Kakashi bow his head in defeat as a rain cloud appeared over his head. Naruto, satisfied with his response to his old sensei, looked back at Tsunade. So what do you say? I'm sure you're dying to get back to work, he said with a grin. Tsunade thought about it for a moment. Alright, fine, you can show me what you learned during your time away, but one condition. Naruto raised a confused eyebrow. And what would that be? That you rejoin Team 7. She said, and Kakashi looked up from his book to take a glance at Naruto. Said blonde just chuckled as a mischievous grin came to his face. Really, that's it? I thought you were going to make me take you out for dinner. His eyes then ran up and down Tsunade's body. Though the idea does sound very nice. Well, that did it for everyone around Tsunade as they all burst out laughing. Tsunade blushed darkly before using her strength to punch Naruto, hoping to send the blonde idiot through a tree or two. The grin remained on Naruto's face as he took to the punch but didn't move or flinch. Well, damn, someone is feisty today. But then again, when are you not? He said calmly as Tsunade's fist remained on his cheek. Tsunade looked at him in surprise and shook, as did the rest of the Junins. As much I love your hands on me, I think it's time for my evaluation, he said cheekily. Whatever, you damn brat, Tsunade mumbled as she took her fist away from his cheek. Just hurry up. Impatient are we? Hearing her growl, the blonde womanizer put his hands up in mock surrender. Okay, I'm done for now. His hands then went back to his side as he got a little serious. Well, as serious as he could. Alright, where to start? He mumbled to himself before sighing in irritation. Well, it's best to start from the beginning at least. After the oh so great battle with Mr. Kill Yourself, I had the unfortunate pleasure to meet the. Whoa, not yet, he said with a slight smirk as he saw Tsunade and Anko prepared to fire out questions. Anyways, it seemed to me that the failed retrieval team was too slow for the asshole, so he was prepared to meet them halfway. Well, most of them were dead, I believe, and our fight could be heard for miles. Also adding in the fact that I tapped into my resident carpet's chakra that had all the reasons to be worried. Flashback. 4 years ago. Orochimaru crouched in between an unconscious Sasuke and a tired and injured Naruto. Well, Naruto-kun, I'm surprised you've held yourself for so long, he said with a smile that still managed to creep Naruto out. It's a perk of not being a. The young blonde growled before foolishly charging at Orochimaru. A thin layer of red chakra surrounded his form. Orochimaru chuckled as he easily blocked and dodged all of Naruto's attacks, making the blonde more angry at him. The blonde jumped back as he prepared to make another Rasengan in hopes of wiping that smile off. However, the snake man quickly appeared in front of him and delivered a sharp kick to his chin, sending him upwards. Orochimaru quickly sent his tongue out to grab Naruto's leg and sent him crashing to floor below. Naruto heard a sharp crack as his vision blurred and couldn't find himself to make a noise out of pain. Kukuku Naruto, you knew better than to attack me, Orochimaru said as he slowly walked up to the young blonde. Now what's stopping me from killing you right now? The blonde spit blood out to the side as best as he could before letting out a dark chuckle as he laid against the hard dirt. I can't see it's because of my good looks, so I'll go with my charming humor. Ha ha ow. Orochimaru looked at him confusingly. This attitude of the boy seems new. What's the change of attitude, boy? Is because you're facing death? That your dreams of being Hokage is over? He reached down his throat and pulled out his sword. Well, the real reason is that I'm going to die a virgin. At least that sword gets more action than I do. Naruto chuckled before flinching in pain. So what are you waiting for? For me to get? Just kill me already. Orochimaru grinned before driving his sword down into Naruto's heart. Flashback ended. Or at least what should have been my heart. The blonde womanizer grinned out, enjoying the looks of confusion from the Junins and Hokage. I should have in all honestly died that day, but sir. Plushie in my tummy didn't feel like dying that day. Naruto, Tsunade slowly said as she got over her shock. What did the fox do? Flashback. 4 years ago. The large crimson fox growled angrily as water splashed all over Naruto's mindset. That damn human snake. I shall rip him apart before devouring that fucking head of his. It yelled and the area started to get darker. Naruto sat down and leaned against the bars with his eyes closed. I don't know why you're losing your shit. Death doesn't seem that bad. Besides, I should be the one angry if anything. I mean, you got to live for a long ass time while I only had 14 years. He mumbled, which only seemed to get the fox angrier. You fucking idiot. I do not wish to die a part of you. I do not wish to die here. With each punctuation, the fox let loose all of its power in a last-ditch effort, causing the room they were in to be flooding in red light. All right, princess. Naruto said mockingly as he stood up to see the red light was quickly being dwarfed by the darkness. He got up and looked at the seal that held the fox. If you wanted to get out that badly, all you had to do was say please. Flashback ended. Now everyone looked at Naruto in shock, confusion, and surprise, yet they couldn't seem to make one of the emotions stay on their faces. Naruto, why you? Kakashi started. Let the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the damn thing that almost ruined your village, go. Yes, I was hoping you got the damn hint. He said nonchalantly as he scratched his scruff, wishing he had some alcohol or women, no both. Do you not realize what you done? Kakashi practically yelled, his book forgotten in his hands. His sensei and his wife didn't die sealing the Kyuubi away for some blonde punk to uncaringly let it free. Naruto just raised an eyebrow before grinning. Of course I do, because I can do this. He pointed at a harmless tree only for a stream of fire to be released on the tree. Within a few seconds the tree was left blackened and toppled over. This. He stomped his foot on the ground as a large piece of earth sprouted and flew at another tree. It crashed into the tree, leaving a nice size imprint on it. Or should I show you this? He clenched his fist as pure lightning surrounded it. He grinned before throwing the ball of lightning at the same tree, causing a mini explosion that left yet another tree blackened and burned. He readjusted his jacket and turned around to see the Junins almost have their jaws on the ground. The Kyuubi didn't leave without paying its rent. A few hours later, we now find our favorite blonde womazir taking a stroll through Konoha's marketplace. Looking for some groceries, maybe go clothes shopping for a bit. Oh, who are we kidding? He was currently finding some chick to fuck and possibly crash at her house for the night until a suitable living arrangements were made. Well, I could always go back to Kurenai-chan. However, strange enough, the blonde didn't want to bother the crimson-eyed beauty, especially after his little show earlier. Naruto sighed to himself. It shouldn't be that difficult to find someone, especially with how some of the looks the women were giving him. Yet he couldn't find it in him to go to these women. He pinched his nose in frustration and slight pride. Kurenai had set a high standard and his body and mind were fighting to keep it. Damn body. Damn that S. Naruto muttered, but was brought out of his thoughts by a body crashing into him. If it hadn't been thanks to his strength and durability, Naruto was sure they would have fallen backwards. He grabbed the feminine body to quickly stop them from falling and gazed into a pair of lavender orbs. Well, hello there, Hinata. He said with a mischievous grin. Eep. Hate there and Naruto-kun. Oh, he was going to have fun with her. Her face blushed a bright red and Naruto mildly wondered if her head was going to explode, yet that didn't stop the grin that remained on his face. Sorry, she whispered as she finally looked at their position. It's quite alright. I just hope that you're alright. My body. Has been known to be hard in some places. He said lowly and huskily before internally laughing at his innuendo. Naruto's comment made her, if it was even possible, blush harder before he let go of her but still remained flushed up against her. Damn, you certain went from cute to sexy in these past 4 years. What do you say we? His eyes traveled down before looking her in the eye. Ketchup. That's when he smelled it. His eyes actually darkened in lust as he smelt Hinata's arousal and barely held in the sensual growl in his throat. As for poor Hinata, her gentle mind couldn't take Naruto's flirting or his muscular body pressed against her. So she fainted with Naruto quickly catching her. Well, this is certainly not the first time this happened. He chuckled. Hinata, where did you? Naruto. Naruto perked up when he heard his name and turned to see Kiba, a huge-ass Akamaru, and a hooded Shino. Kiba's eyes was shocked before he saw the passed-out girl in the blonde man's arms. Damn, why does she always do that around you? Naruto just shrugged and handed her gently over to Kiba. We were having a very friendly conversation before she fainted. And who said that bullshitting was dumb? Hope she's okay and not sick. Kiba waved it off. She'll wake out of it soon. He paused before sniffing the air. I wonder what's that sweet smell. Naruto sniffed the air before shrugging, but internally he was laughing his ass off. Kiba shook his head as he hoisted Hinata on his back. Well, we'll have to catch up sometime later. I better get her home. It was nice seeing you. Likewise, and you too, Shino. Naruto waved out to the hooded shinobi who nodded in his direction before following after his teammates. Naruto sniffed the air again before growling softly. Oh fuck it. He mumbled aggressively as he jumped on the rooftops and took off in one certain direction. Kurenai's apartment. Kurenai as her body laid flat on her bed as she held her face in her pillows in thought. After Naruto's evaluation, if you can call it one, the blonde ran off muttering something about needing a drink. However, she knew it meant he was just going to fuck some other woman. Kurenai groaned as she buried herself deeper in her pillows. That's the problem here. She didn't know why the thought of the blonde champion sleeping with another woman extremely bothered her. She shouldn't care, it wasn't none of her business, and Naruto was not her boyfriend or lover. They were two people who just happened to fuck each other. So there should be no strings attached, right? The thought bothered her so much that she actually had to call team training and bonding off under the lie that she wasn't feeling good. Which in reality she sort of didn't. She just loved how her team was so understanding and even offered ways to help her feel better. Like how Hinata. Kurenai groaned, but this time it sounded heavily with guilt. Even though Naruto had a point that she shouldn't delay her own happiness, the crimson-eyed beauty still felt like she betrayed Hinata's trust by sleeping with her crush not once but twice. And to top it all off, she doesn't mind doing the deed a couple of more times. She had to give it to the blonde man, he knew how to make her feel alive with a couple of kisses. The memories of the late morning and last night came to her and she rubbed her thighs together as she bit her lower lip. She didn't know where the blonde learned how to do the things that he does, but damn is he real good at them. I hope you're think about me, gorgeous. A husky voice growled out as he laid on top of her, mindful of his weight. Especially from what I smell. Why you came back? Kurenai couldn't help but be surprised. She expected him to move on to another girl and act like what happened to them was a one-time thing. Naruto chuckled at her surprised voice as he snuggled into her neck and accidentally, well purposefully, grinded himself in her ass. Of course, why wouldn't I? Well, I thought you wouldn't to move on to someone else. She muttered as she held in a moan. Naruto raised an eyebrow before falling at her side. Well, you set a high bar for me. He grinned as he saw her eyes roll. That and I really enjoy your company, well, when we're not busy. Now that was something she didn't expect, and Naruto chuckled again at her look. Surprised that I like to do more than drink, fuck and fight. He then looked at her, in concern. But what's wrong? You look strange, and not the sexy strange, more like the, I fucked up, strange. By now Naruto pulled Kurenai onto his chest as she hesitantly began to rub circles on his chest. It's just that, I can't help but feel like a huge stealing me away from this unknown person. Naruto stated as he trailed a finger up and down her arm. He felt her nod into his chest and he grinned. Well, I know something that could take you mind of a bit. He said sensually, which Kurenai sighed. Can we please treat this like a serious subject, Naruto-kun? She then blushed at what came out of her mouth. Naruto-kun seems like you enjoy our time together, Kurenai-chan. He said back before sighing. But to be serious for a second, I don't fancy the idea of someone claiming me when they haven't even made the effort to confront me. I mean, with you we at least talked. Sure, I might be a bit of a womanizer, but consider how I feel about this. Naruto said with annoyance. Now, Kurenai looked up at him before he crashed his lips against hers. What do you say we make this night fun and guilt-free? He wagged his eyebrows, which just made Kurenai roll her eye before she connected their lips. Maybe this isn't such a bad thing.